Well, guys, welcome along to another Rangers FC news video here on Glasgow Rangers Nation, and welcome, of course, to all the Celtic fans who are watching, because we all know how much the Celtic fans love watching Rangers channels. I've deleted so many comments, guys, you would not believe. And welcome. It's Old Firm Week. Yes, that's right. Old Firm Week. No matter what them across the city try to insist as regards the Old Firm. So what are we going to talk about? Now, we'll look more at the game sort of as the week comes towards an end. And sorry about cancelling the podcast on Wednesday night. I've changed it to Thursday night. Mies and Bin, obviously, Rabble were live. This is Ibrox alive. And I believe as a YouTuber, as a Rangers YouTuber, we should support each other. We should back each other. You know, we're all here for the same purpose, and that's to bring fans content and to bring fans information about our club. So we're going to talk a little bit about Dave King and his questions for the current Ibrox board. Although he is largely supportive of John Bennett and the board. I was going to talk about Todd Cantwell as well, who's been talking a little bit about how Phillipe Clement has given him a bit of an ego check, which has really benefited him and really turned his season round and turned him round a little bit as a player as well. And also worries and fears coming from the Dutch Eredivisie, from in particular FC Utrecht, regarding Sam Lammers. Now, I think we all kind of presumed that Sam had gone over there and impressed and played well, and the move was going to go through in the summer. We were going to get our money back and everything was great again, but it appears that move could all fall through. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Well, let's start off by talking about Todd Cantwell. Todd Cantwell is, look, I love Todd Cantwell. He is one of our finest players. I just think he is a class act, this lad. He leads the press so well. You know, his passing is first class. He can thread a needle with his passing. He can create space. He can do things that virtually no other player on our team can do. Now, Tom Lawrence obviously is another class act in the 10 role. But I just think that Todd has that little bit of something extra, that little bit of class, that little bit of touch of bravado, of what's the word they always use there, je ne sais quoi, you know, about him. And I think for me, that's what stands him apart from the others who can play in that 10 role for Rangers, you know, in terms of our Momo Diamande, I know can play there. Tom Lawrence can play there, for example. Fabio Silva can play there. But for me, Todd just stands out. He just is a class act. And yeah, there were doubts about him, you know, at the start of the season and you know, through the early days of the Clement reign as well, that he wasn't perhaps playing to the best of his abilities. You know, a little bit of it, I think, being played out of position, didn't like it, sulked a little bit. But it seems that Phillipe Clement has also worked his magic on Todd Cantwell, who has, I think, but for that injury, would have, I think, absolutely dominated the second half of this season. And, you know, we saw on Saturday against Hibs a Cantwell returning to his best, a Cantwell back at where he needs to be. And obviously the Old Firm game this weekend is going to be a huge test for him. You know, he has had criticism, and I think fairly so at times, that he hasn't showed up for Old Firm games, that he hasn't performed to his best in Old Firm games. And I think that's quite fair. You know, he does need to really put on a show this weekend and really take it to them. And we all know, don't we, how much they hate him. They hate him with a passion. They hate Todd the Prod. Todd gets it. You know, he understands it. He understands the hatred for Celtic. And I think he shares a little bit of that as well. And we've seen in the past him sharing his distaste, shall we say, for the green and grey lot across the city. Now, in an interview with the media, Todd Cantwell has talked about the fact that he received a pretty brutal ego check from Phillipe Clement. You know, he finally kind of broke his silence on it. And the ego check that he got was that been hooked after 35 minutes of the Europa League game against Aris. You know, he'd been asked to play out of his traditional position and he didn't really do what the manager was asking him to do. He kind of drifted out of that position, kind of went on, did his own little thing and wasn't doing what the manager wanted, which was affecting the shape of the team, which was affecting the performance of the team. So Phillipe Clement, knowing the fact that Phillipe is the manager, he is the guy who decides what goes on, and he is someone I think, you know, you do not mess with. If he says jump, you say how high. And Todd Cantwell decided obviously not to follow the manager's instructions. Therefore, after 35 minutes, the manager hooked him. Now, this could have obviously, and this did at the time, I think, you know, and for weeks afterwards, caused a lot of rumour and counter-rumour amongst Rangers fans, all talking about, oh, Phillipe Clement doesn't fancy Todd Cantwell. You know, Cantwell's days at Rangers are coming to an end. Todd's not the player he was last season, but he has certainly bounced back and got back to somewhere near his best. You know, and Todd, has spoken about the fact that this came a real sea change in his attitude and in his future of his direction of his Rangers career, and also the fact that he has really changed this season in how he's applying himself and what he's putting out there on the field. Todd said when he was interviewed, he said, yeah, definitely it was a tough moment. No player wants to be that player that is taken off early. Listen, me and the manager have had a lot of conversations, and I have got a lot of respect for the manager. I think he is a good person as well as a good manager. For me personally, in football, you have to hide your ego a little bit sometimes, and you have to understand that things aren't always done for your best interests. It is the club's best interests. I think we have got a manager on our hands who cares very, very much about our club. I would like to think I do have a good attitude. The club is always more important than any individual. I believe that. It's probably more important here than at most clubs. It's an interesting line there. For me, it is being at the end of the season trophies. For me, that will be a good season. I won't go into what the manager and I said, but we had a very honest conversation. It was a very respectful conversation. So it's quite clear that Todd and Phillipe Clement, after that incident where he was taken off after 35 minutes, sat down and had a very open and honest conversation. And I applaud both parties. I applaud Big Phil for having the nerve to do what he did after 35 minutes, and then having the respect and having the great management skills that perhaps our previous manager didn't have. You know, look at the way he treated Fashion Sakala, for example, to sit down with the player, to discuss with the player why he made decisions and why and what he needs to see from that player. And I respect also Todd Cantwell for those comments that he's made. You know, it's quite clear that Todd has, you know, it's kind of fine. And I'm not saying it hadn't previously. I don't know what he was thinking previous to the Aris game. We can only guess and surmise. And you know, there's been a lot of conjecture, a lot of talk about Todd, and people saying, oh, he's only in it for himself. It's TikTok Todd, it's social media Todd, isn't it? And all that. And everyone talking about, you know, Todd the showman, Todd self-promoter and all this, which I think at times is fair, but at other times is very unfair. But, you know, to hear him talking about the fact that, you know, he is a side before self kind of guy. He is someone who understands the team is the most important thing, and that he has to put this team first, for me is just refreshing, and it's great to hear. And I think he's right as well in that comment that he makes, that, you know, he says that it's more important here than at most clubs, and I think that's right. I think, you know, as fans, what we want to see is the players out on the park, no matter who they are, how good they are, how bad they are, whoever they are, that they totally buy into the ethos that this club is a family. This club hurts together, it celebrates together, it bleeds together, it falls apart together, it comes back together. That's not weird to say. It is one big family, and we work together. And it's not about one individual standing out or one individual kind of, you know, saying it's all about me. You know, that's not us. That we're not like some teams around the world who rely on that one or two stars to really, you know, be the player. We rely on everyone to come together as a side, as a team. One Glasgow Rangers, one nation. That's what it is. You know, and that's kind of why I chose the Glasgow Rangers Nation name, really. But, you know, Todd, it's great that Todd has had that change of attitude. Great that he's kind of reformed himself to some degree and is really thinking in the positive way. And this can only stand the team in good stead going forward. You know, an informed Todd Cantwell is a massive positive for Rangers, and what we need on Sunday against Celtic is an informed Todd Cantwell leading the press, opening the door, creating chances, taking chances, being the man who dominates the game. And he can run a game when he sets his mind to it. Todd Cantwell can run a game. He is that good. He can dominate, and you know, he's done it at times even in the Premier League when he was with Norwich, and Cantwell is a class act. He is a class act, and we need to hope that he brings that on Sunday. And it's nice to hear him talking as he is. So full respect to Todd for that. Obviously, guys, let me know what you think of what Todd had to say, and obviously get your thoughts in on Todd this season. What are your overall impressions of him this season? I think he's done, you know, certainly second half of the season a lot better since that Aris game. He really has turned it round and sorted his attitude out. Well done, Todd. Excellent. Love Todd Cantwell. Right, let's move on. Talk about Sam Lammers. And look, I know a lot of you go, oh, God, not him again. Yes, we'll talk about Charlie Chuckle. We'll talk about half of them, the unfunny Chuckle brothers, Mr. Sam Lammers. We'll obviously get to what Dave King wants to say and kind of has been challenging the board over shortly. So what about Sam Lammers? Well, obviously Sam has gone to Utrecht in Holland, and to be fair to Sam, he's done very well out there. Now, Sam, I think, lulled us all into a false sense of security, didn't he? At the start of the season, in the preseason, we saw him play. We all thought, oh, God, he's a good player. We even had people comparing him to an early Brian Laudrup, which I think which was a little bit too much too soon. But he really did turn out to be Mr. Anonymous, didn't he? He never really settled on a position. He played kind of to the right. He played in a 10 role. He played in midfield. He played up front. He never really kind of made any role his own. And whenever he came on, he just looked awful. Missed some sitters. That header at Aberdeen, if he scores that, 2-1, we win the game. I mean, not just that. There was a number of misses that he had during his time at the club. It never, ever worked out, did it? Now, with Utrecht, he's had 12 games. He's scored 5 goals. So it's clear that he's settled in there and he's doing very well out in Holland in the Eredivisie. And maybe it's just because that's the type of football that suits him. They had successful loan spells with Heerenveen whilst he was over there. He did well for PSV to some degree when he was there. Maybe it's just that Holland is where he needs to be, and he's not really a player that can export from there. And you sometimes find that players can play well in their home country. The moment you send them somewhere else to another country, they don't play well. It's just who they are. It often happens with Brazilians in this country. It happens with Italians to some degree in this country, Marco Negri apart. But, it does, Arena Gattuso. But, it does often happen. Now, there is, however, appearing to be a stumbling block over the move of Sam Lammers to Utrecht. Now, it looked like I said that it was a done deal, that they were very keen to take him. And I don't think anything's changed on that. I think, they are exceptionally keen to actually sign Sam Lammers on a permanent basis. They like him. The fans like him. The coach likes him. He's done a job for them and they see him having a future at the club. But his club coach has been talking a little bit about Sam and why this deal may fall through. This is what the coach had to say about Sam Lammers. He said, I would like to think I do. No, that's the wrong quote. So I do apologize. That's the wrong quote. How embarrassing is that? So he talked about the fact that this is it. We are very happy with Sam. He plays good football and he's a great guy. Well, I'm pleased for him. He definitely didn't at Rangers. I'm not saying he wasn't a great guy. He probably was. And if he would like to stay longer, we will do everything we can. However, there are factors that you cannot control. Rangers and money. Now, it appears that Rangers would be seeking a substantial transfer fee for Sam Lammers, given the success that he has now had, somewhere in the region of perhaps £2 to £3 million. And it appears that Utrecht are unable to pay that amount of money. Now, I think Rangers have got a very big decision upcoming in the summer, as regards Lammers. Do you kind of cut your losses and go, it didn't work out, Michael Beale fucked it up, Michael Beale screwed it up, Michael Beale paid too much money for the lad, we just have to kind of take the loss, take it on the chin. Okay, Utrecht, 1 million, 1.5 million, thank you so much, half the value, but at least we get something back for him and we get his wages back. Is that what we do? Or do we play hardball and say, no, he's £2.5, £3 million, that's what we want. If you're not willing to pay it, then maybe somebody else in the Dutch Eredivisie is willing to pay it, given how well he's played. But then you risk a situation where you're then going to be stuck with the player come the start of the season. You may have to send him out on loan again and you're not getting the money. You may have to be paying some of his wages. There's two sides to it. It is a big kind of worry for Rangers going forward. And look, personally speaking, this is just my personal opinion. And like I said, if you don't agree with this, let me know what you think. But I honestly think that, he is settled there. He is doing well there. And for me, he's a player we need to get off our books. I think all of us would have said in January that if someone had offered us £1 million for him or £1.5 million, we'd have gone, yeah, please, thank you, take him. Here he is. Have him, please. Any money is gratefully received. A bag of Rebels would have been greatly received, I think, at that point. But I think we do need to just cut our losses. As much as I would love us to get our money back, of course I would. I'd love us to get £3.5 million for him, whatever it is we wasted on him, buying him from Atalanta, that Michael Beale, wasted on him. Absolute clueless idiot. We do need to just cut our losses. We just need to say, okay, it didn't work here. We are going to lose money, but it's going to be best for you, best for the club if you move on. Thanks for trying, Sam. good luck, all the best for the future. That's just my attitude, guys. And you may disagree with that. You may say, no, that's not the right attitude. We play hardball for him. We try and get somebody else interested. We kind of get our money back, and that's fine if you think that. I just personally think, cut your losses, get rid. 1.5 million, do the deal. Just get him out the door, because that's what's best for the club at the end of the day. You certainly, like I said, don't want to be stuck with him going into the new season. Phillipe Clement needs some money. Yes, it isn't ideal, but at least it generates another million and a half for our transfer budget in the summer, which is going to be critical given the fact we need a couple of strikers, we need a left back, we need a couple of centre halves. We probably need another central midfielder. We need a winger. We need a number of players, and there does need to be a bit of a retool go on during the summer. And Clement needs as much money as possible to have that retool. So, look, that's just my personal opinion. You may disagree. Please feel free. That's it, guys. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think in the comments. Well, Dave King has been talking, former Ibrox chairman, obviously Dave King. We know we've got a lot to be thankful for. He says that, obviously Dave says he watches every game still, no matter where he is in the world. And he says as a supporter of the club. And he says he has questions which he feels that all supporters are currently asking. And I think some of the questions that he asks are quite apt and quite telling if you really do, kind of follow me. I spoke to the Herald, and he said that, he said, I watch every Rangers game. I watch on Rangers TV wherever I am. I can access it all over the world, and I watch all of the games. He says, but, I have frustrations like any fan, and I have questions that, like any fan, I would love to be answered. And I think the questions that he raises are very apt. And what he says is very apt. He says, what is happening with the transfer policy? Why can't we keep guys on the pitch? We improve the squad to try and narrow the gap, and then the guys aren't getting any playing time. Is it recruitment? Is it medical? I'm just like any other supporter in that sense. Now, I think this comment is very apt. This question is very apt. Now, for me, recruitment has to be got right. And I think that Niels Koppen, and I'm confident that Niels Koppen and Phillipe Clement will get summer recruitment right. We know that historically the January transfer window is a very tough window. It's an awful window to try and get players in. You're often absolutely ripped off because it's a seller's market in January. Teams know what you're desperate for. They will overcharge you for players. They'll try and get too much money for the player. Some people was talking about £3.5 million for Shankland, which I think was too much for a player with 18 months left on his contract, no matter what he would have brought to the club. This is right. And I do have, faith that Clement and Koppen, given the time, given the backing from the board, will get this right. But I think what King is asking is very much the fact that why are we signing players that necessarily are no better than what we already had or have? I think, as much as, and I'm probably going to get absolutely slaughtered for saying this, and I'll just say it anyway. Cholak was allowed to leave. Dessers brought in. Dessers is not as good as Cholak. Fact. Sakala was allowed to leave. Again, players that have been brought in, not as good. I mean, Abdallah Sima, obviously, good recruitment, great recruitment. The recruitment in the January transfer window was also good. Cortez, good player, unfortunately out injured. Diamande, good player, still needs time to settle. And January is always a difficult time to come in and hit the ground running. Silva, good signing, good player. That's good. Some obviously was more ropey. The signings that of Lammers, not great. Dessers, not great. Some of the signings in the summer were particularly dreadful, and that's fair enough. But, he's right in the fact that when we're recruiting these players, why are we perhaps not looking at injury histories? Why are we not looking at the fact that these players are getting hurt? And why is it they're constantly getting hurt at Rangers? What is it about the club that is breeding this kind of sick note mentality? Ryan Jack constantly out, Roof constantly out, Cortez comes in, gets injured, goes out. Seamer, obviously not our fault, international duty. What is it? Is it purely down to training techniques, to conditioning techniques? Phillipe Clement has spoken about that, hasn't he? He's talked about the fact that the fitness wasn't where he wanted it, the conditioning wasn't where he wanted it. And I'm confident and I'm hoping, he's talked about the fact that in the past at teams, he's always had 95% availability of his playing staff when he's been the coach. So I'm hopeful that come the summer, come pre-season, he gets a full pre-season program into our players. He can kind of reduce the muscle injuries that the players that get, those muscle strain injuries that come about. And I think some of that is down to the strength conditioning work that was done in the summer that wasn't clearly good enough by Michael Beale and his team. Sorry to bring that guy's name back into it again. That's just, I think, a plain fact. The other one, I think, is kind of not our fault, and is not the club's fault, and it is not in our remit to kind of control. You know, we have an awful lot of hammer throwers in this league who will quite gladly just take our players out and kick lumps out of them. You know, St Johnstone did to Todd Cantwell, for example. Hearts did to Danilo. You know, you've got a situation there where the injuries that are sustained are not down to the players or the strength and conditioning. They're down to just simply dirty foul play by the opposition, and that is always going to happen in Scotland because, you know, those clubs, those little clubs that, you know, like Hearts, like Hibs, like Ross County, St Johnstone, Livingston, you know, all those, Dundee, all those little clubs know they cannot compete with ourselves and that lot across the city. So the only way they can compete is by kicking the crap out of us for 90 minutes and hoping that they can fluke a goal because we're all too scared of getting the crap kicked out of us. So that is kind of also, I think, playing a role in the injuries, impact injuries. So I think, you know, that's pretty spot on with what Dave King has to say with that comment. He also talked about, you know, a little bit as well. He talked about the whole Graham Souness thing in the summer and how he thought it was really unfortunate what he said about Frank Lampard. Didn't agree with him in the slightest. He said that should have been kept in-house and never should have been allowed out into the open media. You know, he says that overall, obviously, Phillipe Clement's done very well. He's been very positive, and it has obviously been the right decision. You know, he is not criticising the board. I think that's one thing we need to get across. He's not down talking John Bennett and the rest of the board. He is supporting the board, which I think we do need to do, you know, through this summer transfer window, give them the backing that hopefully they will deliver on their promises and they will deliver on bringing in the best players and good players that can improve this team and give Clement and Coppen the money they need to improve this squad. He says, Dave King says, I have the comfort now that I maybe didn't have a year or two ago, where I do feel that John Bennett is the right guy. He should have been there when I left. I think that's true. I mean, I think Douglas Park and Stuart Robertson were an absolute, complete and utter disaster. Something I never really commented on before. I didn't really comment on Douglas Park and Stuart Robertson and give any strong opinions on them at the time because of the relationship that Victoria's family had with Stuart Robertson. And I think, you know, the fact that Victoria didn't like me down talking Stuart Robertson, so that's why I never said anything. She's a big friend and fan of Stuart Robertson's. But, you know, Dave King says that, you know, John Bennett should have been there when I stepped down. John was the natural one. He was the person to take over. I'm very confident with John, not only about his passion for the club, but also for the future of the club under him. So it's nice to hear, obviously, that Dave King has some faith in John Bennett. You know, Dave King is never usually quiet in his opinions when he doesn't think things are going well. I think he's right that, you know, that once he stepped down, it should have been John Bennett that took over and not Douglas Park, not Stuart Robertson getting involved, because both were a disaster for this club. You know, so that's fair enough. I think, you know, Dave King's right to ask those questions. I think the questions he asks, a lot of fans are asking. It's just natural questions. And I think obviously the summer will big that build up. Now we'll continue to build up towards the Old Firm game on Sunday here on the channel, guys. Best way to make sure you don't miss out on any of the great content is to make sure you smash the sub and obviously like the content too. Thank you so much for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. On the way out, two things I always ask of you. Number one, smash the like, and number two, please always remember, we are the people.